Hi, this is EMcGEE. Welcome to Youth Watercolor Painting. This is the summertime in Maine, and as you can see, I am painting from Town Landing Beach in Falmouth, Maine. We have a great class for you, and I'm so excited because even though it's foggy today, usually it's a beautiful blue sky and blue ocean, but it's foggy. We're going to adapt our class today to work with drippy, foggy sort of paint. So these are the materials we need today. We need paper, and I have watercolor paper. We need a pencil, pen, black ink pen, pencil, some brushes, a cup with some water in it, paper towels, and watercolor paint. So watercolor paints, again, come in two different types. You can have squeeze tubes or you can have cakes. Sometimes the cakes are square like this. Sometimes they're round. You'll have either one of those. So let's get started. The first thing that I do, which you don't have to do as a painter, I just prefer this. I have put tape around the edge of my paper. It can be masking tape, kind of that yellowy tape. It could be, this is blue painter's tape, doesn't matter. And what I do is I just put it around the edge of my paper. It does two things. Number one, it keeps my paper from bubbling, so I can kind of connect it to the cardboard or whatever surface I have it on. And so when the paper gets wet, it keeps it from bubbling. The second thing it does is it creates a beautiful white border. So when I'm done painting, I have this white border, which looks really pretty and professional, and it's great. I'll show it to you. It's kind of magical when it's done. I have my easel here, and because I'm outdoor painting, this is called painting in plein air. My easel is lightweight, it's collapsible, and as you can see, I can change it around and shift it in different shapes and sizes. At this point, I have my paper at a horizontal, which is a long way because I'm doing landscape painting. So when you go to print something out in your printer, you'll see that there's two directions for paper: landscape and portrait. So we have ours, and that's just self-explanatory. If you're going to do a portrait of someone, it's better to do it this way. If you're doing a landscape, it's better to do it that way. So printers also call it portrait or landscape mode, which is kind of fun to think about. Okay, so we have our paper in the landscape position, and because we don't need to start off with a pencil, we're just going to go ahead and dive in painting. Now my paper right now is dry. We're going to learn 3 different water techniques today in class. The first technique is called wet on dry. I am going to take a brush with a little bit of water, which makes my brush wet, and I'm going to put it on dry paper. We're going to use this to sketch out our composition for our painting. Now, even though you guys may be all over the place in Arizona or in Egypt, you are basically painting with me today on the Maine coast. So come on, I'm going to get got a series of brushes. I think I'm going to choose a brush, which, here it is. I'm choosing a brush which has a little bit of point, almost like a pencil. And I've got my paint, and I have my water here. This is cool. This is a jug. Sounds sort of funny, but so when I'm outdoor painting, I filled this whole thing up with water, and then what I do is I can squeeze it, and it basically squeezes fresh new water into this little tiny container. So then I can pour it out when it gets dirty, and I can re-squeeze water. See, and now I have like fresh water again. It's there's all these great painting gadgets. You actually don't need any of them, but having done this for so long, I just continue to collect them. Okay, so the other fun thing is if you don't have water, you can take your watercolor paints to the beach especially if you're on salt water like the ocean or the bay. And you can use salt water to paint with. And salt water is so much fun to paint with, because if you remember in some earlier classes I've taught with, what happens when we put salt in watercolor paint? It makes the paint and the color all grainy, almost like it's snowing or it has texture. So I'm using regular water, but please, 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 at some point, try to paint using ocean water. It's really cool. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is I do not have the color black on my watercolors. I'm gonna make black. I am gonna mix brown plus blue, and brown plus blue gives me sort of a black color. And I'm gonna make it kind of watery because I want it more to be like a light gray. So I'm mixing some water with it. And so here's my first color. I'm gonna do my whole sketch in this kind of grayy, browny, blacky color. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I am going to draw my horizon line. And again, the horizon line is the line where the sea, where the ocean meets the sky. I think you can see that back there. The second thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna think about where the ocean meets the sand next to me on the beach. And there's no waves here. We're on the bay, and it's very quiet here. So there's just kind of this wavy line right here. This is where the ocean meets the beach. It's kind of quiet little line there. Now, I am going to, I'm making a little bit more of my paint. I am going to draw rocks. There's these, because the tide is coming in, so some of the rocks are out in the water because the tide is slowly creeping up. And remember, as the rocks get closer to me, they get bigger. We learned about that in perspective. When things get closer to you, they often get bigger. Now, I'm so excited that the fog is lifting a little bit. I'm starting to see some boats out there. One of the boats is this really strange boat closest to me, and it looks like almost a portable gangplank or a portable bridge or something, and I actually don't want that picture. I don't want it in my paper, but let me show you a trick. Okay, so say like I decided, okay, I'm gonna put that weird looking thing in my painting. Here it is. It's kind of got this shape like this, and then it's got this little thing like this. I don't know, it's just kind of this random something or other. Okay, well, I actually don't really want that in my picture. So one of the tricks about watercolor painting, and I love this, you can erase it. And do I use an eraser to erase it? No. I get a paper towel, and I'm putting water on it. And I am gonna just erase this with water. Isn't that cool? You didn't know that you could erase paint with water. Well, maybe you did, but I love that. Okay, so I didn't want that boat. Even though the boat is right there, it's right in front of me, I don't have to put it in my painting. I'm an artist. I don't have to do that. So I am gonna put all these little pretty boats. So all these pretty boats way out here, and they've got these beautiful masts to them. The masts, again, are the sails that go way up here into the sky. And see, the boats, I don't even have to do much with the boats. I'm literally putting in just some shapes, some shadows to indicate that there's boats there. And then again, that's kind of where my water is coming in, some ripply water. And basically that's my painting. There we go. This is called a composition sketch. So I basically know exactly now what I'm gonna paint. I sketched in my water and I love the drips. See how there's dripping going right there? Watercolor is great for dripping. The more drips, the better. So we are going to talk all about dripping nowadays, and especially, again, see this fog? See the horizon line? It's pretty dark, and in reality, the fog is very light. If I want to, I can lighten up my line a little bit so it's not quite as dark. I can add some water to look, I'm literally just painting with water. And I'm lightening up this horizon line just a little bit because, again, it's so foggy. It's actually hard to see it. Look how much I'm lightening this. And I'm making it almost like it's super foggy. Now, today again is about dripping. And this is seriously what professional watercolor artists do. You're like, wait, I thought only kids dripped stuff. No way. Part of the fun about being an artist is to be experimental and to play and to get messy. So we are going to do what professional watercolor painters do, which now you're going to learn how to do. I am turning my painting upside down. Look at this. And I am going to paint with my painting upside down, and we're going to paint the coolest sky ever. So follow me. I'm going to change my paintbrush from that little pointy one to one that's a little bit bigger, and that's kind of got a flat head. You don't have to have that. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. It's fun to also challenge yourself that using different types of paintbrushes makes different types of marks. And you should never just stick with one brush. Really, like, explore. Now, this is going to sound crazy to you, but I am going to paint with just water. I'm not putting any paint in it. Who knew that part of painting could just be with water, no paint whatsoever? So my painting is upside down, and look what I'm going to do. I am starting at my horizon line, and I am just painting upside down. And what I'm doing, I'm not getting my masts wet. I'm going between my masts, and I'm just painting my paper with water. Look at that, isn't that cool? Once I have my paper saturated, which means full of water, and that's why it's important to use watercolor paper. Watercolor paper is like a sponge. It's thick and it's made for holding lots of water. If you did this with regular typing paper or printing paper, or sometimes even just sketching paper, your paper is going to get all wrinkly, and it's gonna not do what you want to do. So try to get some mixed media paper, or even better yet, watercolor paper, because it's made to hold water. And that's what you're painting with, watercolors. So I am taking my blue. I'm trying to get a very bright, intense blue. I'm adding, and again, my painting is still upside down. I'm going to add some blue, and I'm putting it just at the top of where the horizon line is, kind of. And look, it is dripping. Look at it dripping down, and I want it to drip. And because my paper is already saturated with water, it's going to take its own sweet time dripping and doing its thing. And so part of the fun about painting is not knowing necessarily what it's going to look like. It's sort of a surprise. I'm adding some darker blue on there. Here's some boats in the background. And I'm letting that drip and do its thing. While it's doing that, I might even add a different shade of blue on top. See what that does. Again, it's just kind of dripping and doing its thing. There we go. And it's not really getting where I want to, so I'm going to go ahead and just make sure it gets in there a little bit. I'm going to paint into the places where it should be blue. And I'm helping it in its drippiness. Okay. Now, I think just for the fun of it, I'm going to take some white paint. I have some white. Because it's so foggy and there's a lot of white in the sky, I'm going to go ahead and put some white paint on it and let it drip some more. There we go. Okay. Now, again, if you were to use salt water or even sprinkle some salt on top of this while it's dripping, super cool effects. I don't have any salt water. Well, I've got salt water right there, but I'm not going to go get it right now. And I don't have any salt. So we're just going to see what it looks like without salt. Now, while that's dripping, I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to clean my brush just a little bit. And I'm going to throw out this water and get some fresh water. That's the fun part about painting outside. Watercolors are non-toxic and you can basically put them anywhere. So again, my water is just going off the side into the beach. And again, it's just water, a little tiny bit of paint, which is non-toxic and good. So now I have fresh water and a fresh clean brush. Now, I don't have to just let this drip one way. I can let this drip this way if I want to. And I'm going to do that because I'm starting now on my ocean. So as you can see, my whole sky is starting to drip in that other way, which is kind of fun. And now it's time to make our super drippy ocean. So once again, we're only going to paint where our ocean is. I'm going to take my paper and I'm not going to, again, I'm only going to paint with clear water. I'm not going to get into my boats. I'm going to try to avoid where my boats are. Only painting with water. Again, going into, where the water is going to meet my beach eventually. I'm going to avoid my rocks. And again, it's like, why are you just painting with water? Because that will help. When I put water down first, it's going to help control my drips. Okay, so I just painted with water. Now I'm going to get a darker blue color. As you can see, when we look out at the sky, the ocean is darker than the water. Okay, but this is a trick because when things come toward you, you want them to look bluer because that's going to make it seem closer. So how am I going to make an ocean which looks like it's bluer closer to me and still darker? That might be accomplishing too much. Let's just paint it blue. Okay, so I'm going to actually take some of my blue that I used before and mix it with some brown because blue and brown together makes a dark black or almost a dark gray. And I'm going to paint it, instead of dripping it upside down, I'm going to have it drip from the top because then maybe it'll look like some waves. It's going to kind of have this interesting effect with waves coming down. Let's see how to do this. And I'm going to make the water closest to me bluer, like where the waves are. I'm going to make that a beautiful blue, not quite as dark, because again, the closer to me that it is, the bluer it is. And the further away it is, the kind of more browny it is. So further away, I've got more brown in my blue. And closer to me, it's more blue. And I'm going to let that dry. So far, we've done 2 painting techniques. When we first drew on our canvas, we used a wet brush on a dry paper. That's called wet on dry. Now we've learned the second technique, which is wet on wet. We got our paper wet and we used a wet paintbrush on wet paper. That's called wet on wet. And that's what we want to do when we drip. Lots of drips. It's just the wetter it is, the drippier it is. So wet on wet. Now we're going to learn the third painting technique, which is called dry on dry. Now, in some ways, to best do this technique, you need to have the tubes of paint, almost like you're using like little acrylic tubes. It's harder to do it with cakes. Number one, the cakes in my paint are already sort of wet. Number two, you have to wet them a little bit in order to get them to work. So I am going to, once again, I need to get my fresh water going. I'm going to clean out the bluish water I've used, wash my paintbrush off so it's a clean paintbrush, get some clean water. Again, you guys just can run and change your water out. And I am going to take my thinking about the color of sand. So we're looking at the sand. It's very much a browny white color. I'm not going to put any water first. I'm going to use white and kind of a browny color. And I'm literally going to just kind of on dry paper, because my paper is dry right here. I used a little bit of blue. Anyway, and I'm going to try to not dip my water in the paint. I'm going to use a little bit. I'm trying to get this feeling of beach. And again, it's a little hard to do this because it's not, we have to put some water into it. But you're going to get a sense when that dries of some kind of yellowy, browny beach. See, it's still dripping, very much dripping. The last thing I'm going to do is paint my rocks. And I'm not going to get my rocks wet either. And I'm going to go back to that initial brown and blue combination, which makes that pretty gray, because the rocks close to me are, let's see if you can see them. They're just kind of gray. So let's see, I'm not going to put these very dark. I'm going to use a lightish gray color, and very light. I'm just going to put some very light colors of gray in there. Okay, so that's basically almost all of our painting. I'm going to turn it back the right side. Here we go. So now it's dripping normally. Okay. And now this is fun. I'm going to put some little tiny details in my painting. I'm going to take a tiny brush. Okay, look how tiny this brush is, right? It's like tiny, 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 tiny. And this is where I'm going to have fun putting some brighter colors. As you see, my view is very blue and brown, right? But the boats, which I know there's, you can start seeing them a little bit. The fog's going down a little bit. The boats have a lot of pretty red in the sails. Some of them have like some fun sort of red tops to them, like kind of canopy covers. Some of the sails have red in them, right? Some of the boats have red bottoms like that. Gonna make some red in the sails. They'll drip a little bit, which is okay. Some of the boats are a really pretty shade of yellow. I'm gonna add this yellow boat over here. And it's okay if it drips. And if it drips too much, I just can get a paper towel. Watch this, because this red is dripping a little bit more than I want it to. Paper towel, and all I have to do is kind of go like that, and maybe, look, I'm even gonna paint with my finger. I'm gonna add a little bit more of that blue into it. And look, it kind of made an interesting shadow. Okay, and again, here's my yellow going crazy. I'm gonna keep a little bit of it in there because it's almost like a shadow of yellow, a reflection on the water. So I've got some red, I've got some yellow. Let me put a little bit more of the sailboat masts in here, some blue. Let's see here. Again, you can draw turtles in your water. You can put sharks, mermaids. You can do a lot of stuff in your water. Dogs, lots of dogs swim here. And because it is so foggy, I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to take my white paint again, just to see what happens here. I'm going to put it a little bit on the horizon line. Because it's so foggy, it makes sense that it's hard to see where the water hits the ocean. Like that. And I think I'm going to make the top of my ocean, the top of my sky, a little bluer. And see how it's going to still continue to drip. And so you can always kind of adjust it. I also think I'm going to put some more blue in my water. I like that because when it's dripping, it almost looks like it's creating these reflections from the boats and the masts. Okay, the very last thing I'm going to do with my paint, no, actually, sorry, one more thing. The second to last thing I'm going to do with my paint is ideally you let it dry, right? Uh-oh, see this drip is getting away from me. Kind of wipe that thing out. This is kind of fun. Look, if I want to, I can make clouds by sticking my my piece of paper towel into the water. And look, if you go like that with a paper towel, it almost looks like there's clouds in the sky. It's super fun. Just my fingers. See, kind of looks like there's clouds going. So, okay. The last thing the second last thing I'm gonna do is, ideally I would have this dry. But just to show you for class, I'm gonna grab my ink pen, and it's just a black ink pen. And I'm gonna put some details in. I'm gonna get really close to you. You can see what I'm doing. And for instance, on this boat, there's some stripes on it. And maybe it has a line, maybe it has a name on it. Like here's a mast, here's a mast. I'm gonna draw some details into it. This boat over here, again, it's got a little bit more going for it than just a yellow blob. It's got a mast to it. I might go ahead and put some detail boats here. So I'm going to put some details of some boats and what they're doing, right? Maybe this guy's got a bass too, okay? And the rocks, like right now there's all these kids and dogs out here on the rocks. So there's a woman sitting here on the rocks and some kids playing. I'm going to put, I think I'm going to put a woman sitting here. And again, even people are hard to draw. So you can just make them into different geometric shapes. So here's a woman sitting here on these rocks. And she is like just thinking about things and hanging out with her kids. So here's a woman on the rocks with her feet in the water. And then I'm going to put maybe I'm going to put like her children who are playing. There's a little girl playing right here in the waves. And again, you can make people by just saying, okay, here's the body, here's the hands. You don't have to like be super good at making people. You just kind of draw them in shapes like triangles and rectangles. So there's some kids here playing on the rocks. Maybe some closer waves like that. Here's another boat. Okay, so what I did is from my watercolor paper, I added some details with some pen. Give this woman an eye. And I'm going to put one more child down here with a bucket because he's playing with a bucket of sand. And he's going to be on the beach too with his hat on. Playing with sand. Anyway, so that's my drawing. Okay, now here's the very last part, and this is my favorite part. After your painting is dry, and again, I'm probably doing this a little bit sooner than I should, I am going to peel off the tape. Sometimes some of my paint comes off with the tape. And in that case, what I do is I'm going to make it look like it's a sketch. I literally just kind of draw a line there. It looks very sketchy in a good way. So I'm peeling off my paper, my tape, and I have this beautiful clean line right here. See? And then I'm going to put my name and artist signature and the date, and this becomes like a diary entry so that when I'm 106, I can look back at it and say, oh my gosh, I know exactly when I did this. It was a foggy day in Falmouth, Maine, and all these kids were on the beach. So when you put your name and your artist signature on a watercolor paper painting, even though we've used black ink, we're going to use pencil. And I don't know, it's just tradition. You use pencil, and I put my artist signature there, and now I'm going to print out my name. And today's date, which is June. Okay, and then I'm going to give it a title. I think my title today is going to be Kids on the Beach. Kids on Beach, Maine. See, and I'm done. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you for next class. We'll be in a different location. Have a great day, and remember to post your paintings on our Youth Art Studio Facebook gallery. I'm EMcGEE. Talk to you later.